next to the famous Lazarus?
I have.
You see my chains. They couldn't have me roaming around and stinking up the place, and I had made a few enemies, being a friend of Jesus, and so they confined me here.
There is a story written in one of our holy books that tells of you and Jesus. I've come to investigate the truth in that story. Can you tell me what happened?
You mean the story of my miraculous resurrection from the dead? Very well. It is the only story anyone ever wants to hear. I had known Jesus as a boy. Even then, we knew he was special. He would make clay figures of birds and then breathe life into them, and they would fly around. How we enjoyed watching them. My sisters, Mary and Martha, and Jesus' cousin Judas would all sit and watch for hours as he played.
Judas was Jesus' cousin?
Yes. Did you not know that? I understand Jesus has become quite famous. I imagine people do not want to taint his memory with bad relatives. But yes, Judas was Jesus' cousin. He spent time with us until he was possessed by a devil. We were not allowed near him, except for Jesus, who was the only person who could calm him down. Except for that one day when he bit Jesus.
Bit him? Where?
On the side. When I watched him dying on the cross, I could still see the scar from that bite. And then I watched a Roman soldier pierce that spot with his spear as if it had been foreordained. Or maybe the soldier just thought the scar was a good target.
What happened to Judas when he bit Jesus?
Jesus was not without emotion and struck him in anger after being bitten. In that moment he drove the devil out of him. But Judas was never the same. He had been like the rest of us, but the devil must have taken a piece of him when he departed.
Please, continue your story.
Ah yes, me. Neither Mary nor Martha married, and when our parents died we remained in the same house. I worked as an excavator of tombs. This very tomb is one which I myself had dug. Centuries of solitude allow one to appreciate all manners of irony. I understand there is a saying that speaks of one digging one's own grave. I understand that one fully. I remember I had been pressed to hurry on a particular tomb, whether from the dampness of the underground or the strain of hasty work. I grew severely ill. I had hoped Jesus would come to visit and heal me, as I had heard he had done with others. My sisters sent him urgent messages about me, but he never came, and I died within a few days. I am told that my sisters took good care of my body, wrapping it in fine linens and placing it here in the tomb below. I recall little of that time. Darkness, swirling fog, dim forms of people screaming, reaching for me, disappearing into the mist and miasma above and below. I wanted to run and flee anywhere, but I could not move. And then, after a time, I know not how long, I began to have the sensation of floating and sensed heat and light approaching, as if riding on a ship and emerging from under clouds into a sunlit sky. And then I felt a pull, as if someone was tugging on my arm. Suddenly I sat upright, in spite of the linens I had been tightly wrapped in. I removed what I could to allow myself to walk, and climbed the stairs to this chamber, and then those to the outside. There stood Jesus and my sisters with a small crowd of people. All of them drew away as if I were some monster. Yes, even my sisters. all except Jesus, smiling calmly. I tried to feel his calm, tried to bathe in the smile of my friend, but I could not help but see the fear in those around him, and their reactions as they smelled my decay. I tried returning to my home with Mary and Martha, but they could not conceal their discomfort with my presence. Even I could smell my own rotting flesh. The process of putrefaction had not stopped, even though I had been brought back to life. I knew I had to leave them, and decided the best place for me was here. I needed no food, nor drink, and no fresh air. It seems in resurrection one does not even breathe, and so I settled into my tomb. A few curious people came by to see me, but I was largely forgotten, or perhaps avoided. And as I sat here, years, then decades passed. Occasionally at night I would walk the streets, and people would run from me. To get them to behave, parents warned their disobedient children of the monster Lazarus who would carry them off. I considered traveling elsewhere, but where would I have gone? And Bethany was my home, and now this tomb was my home. One day a delegation arrived and said they had decided I must be chained for the good of the community. I allowed them to attach the chains to the wall and then to my body, and when the last link was closed, I bit the man. I heard he grew ill with disease from that bite, and so everyone else avoided me. I sat in seclusion, staring at the doorway above, wondering what changes were occurring around me. A few years ago, perhaps if I measured time at all correctly, after centuries of inactivity, someone came to visit me. What did he call himself? An archaeologist? I assumed he was looking for the Ark of the Covenant, but he said he had been searching for me. He was the first of the scholars and doctors who came to examine me and take pieces of me for further study. When they came close enough, I bit them, like the caged animal I am.
Lazarus, I've heard reports of people who have visited you who are now suffering from a putrefying disease. They seem to be dead, yet still walk and communicate.
Perhaps my state of, what would you call it, undeath. Perhaps it is communicable.
Perhaps. They are being treated as you have been. Isolation and further study.
If they are like me, they would want nothing more than to be left alone, or to be killed once and for all. And you, what is it you want by coming to see me here?
I had several reasons for coming. One, I wanted to meet the famous Lazarus, who knew Jesus, and have you confirm that he, whom some consider merely an historical personage, and whom others worship as the Messiah and Savior of humankind, did indeed live. Two, I wanted to see firsthand your undead state, a different version of immortality than I myself have experienced.
You are immortal.
I am. My experiments in a science called alchemy allowed me to create a substance that made me so.
And what has been your experience of immortality?
I've explored the world and sought knowledge wherever I can, and worked toward the betterment of civilization.
Betterment? For those animals? I can still see the look on the faces of those who came to see the miracle of my resurrection. Such contempt and hatred. They all deserve to perish in fire, or to live eternally as I do, unable to appreciate or enjoy life in any way, thirsting for but always denied the life that had been mine.
I do not share your view of humanity and would prefer to raise them to a higher level of existence, but I assume we shall ever disagree on that point. With that thought, I will take my leave of you and thank you for talking with me and for not biting me.
You never came close enough to give me a chance.
No, I did not. May I ask, did Jesus ever come to visit you after he brought you back?
Only once, before his own death. He didn't seem to mind the smell. We went for a walk outside, and I think Martha and Mary were glad to get rid of me for a time. As I recall, we had a very pleasant conversation. He never came by again, but then of course he found himself quite busy.
Do you recall anything in particular that you spoke about with him?
Nothing much. Relatives and friends in common. A little about politics. And one other thing. Perhaps it is significant.
Yes.
We talked about the consequences of miracles. One other question for you. You say the world holds Jesus as a savior.
Many do, yes.
I wish he had saved me from death before I died, so I would not have to tolerate this living death, watching pieces of myself fall away like a leper, and sitting forever in a tomb of my own making. Let that be my epitaph.
I wish for your sake he had done so, Lazarus.